as you build skill at reading complicated texts, as you get better at doing it, as you get accustomed to it, you build habits and you no longer need something like this. But starting out, something like this is really helpful as a way to get information out of the text. And you're going to see at the very top, I'll take a picture of it. Okay, so on the very top, the first thing you're going to see is really a way to analyze the source that you're using. So you have to list the title and what chapter or section, if that applies. It doesn't apply to everything you're using. Can you pass those that away? Who wrote this thing? 1, 2, 3, 4. Pass that away. And 2, 3, 4. Hey, I have exactly the right number. Crazy. What is their affiliation or credential? What does that mean? It really means, are they qualified to tell me something about this? So I could go write an article about bacterial life on Mars. Do you know how much I know about bacterial life on Mars? Not a whole lot. I could go write an article about, the nuances of football. You know how much I know about football? Not a whole lot. Now, there are things I do know a whole lot about. But there are a whole bunch of things I'm completely unqualified to tell you anything about. So what you want to know is the person who wrote the article, is there some reason that I should believe what they're saying? And this is just a means of evaluating sources. We talked briefly about Wikipedia and the fact that if you know a whole lot about the topic already, it's not a bad place to just get some double check. But the less you know about something, the less you should rely on something like Wikipedia, because I could go in and edit the article about football. And if you know nothing about the subject, you're not going to know that I am completely full of baloney. Full of hot air. Know nothing. Just writing. Some people can do a really good job writing about something they know nothing about, and it sounds fairly convincing. So let's walk through this together. Now, the title. What is the title of the piece that you have? Salt of the Earth, How Do Plants Cope? So remember, we're looking at sources so that we can start to do sort of a literature search, because you're going to look at some resources to build a hypothesis about what you think is going to happen to your plant. So Salt of the Earth, How Do Plants Cope? Okay. Are there chapters or sections in this? Are you dealing with a larger book? No. It's just an article. It is just an article. Okay. Once you've got that, find the author. You got it, Robbie?
Good morning, Beaver Local. Could we all stand for Pledge of Allegiance?
Okay, Robbie, you got the author? Okay, who's the author? Narissa Hannon. And where'd you find it?
In the last page the last page with all the URLs.
Okay.
Right on top of that, it says University of Cambridge.
So you also got her affiliation. So you're going to fill out the author's name, Narissa Hannon, and you also have her affiliation. When it says university, what does that mean? College. Yeah, she's associated with a college. Now, we don't know if she's there as a biologist. We don't know if she's there as somebody who cuts the lawn. But we're going to assume that because she's written an article on the website for the Society for Experimental Biology, and it's about salt stress in plants, it's probably a pretty good bet that when she says she's from the University of Cambridge, she's a biologist. So we're going to say that her association is University of Cambridge. a credential would be like if it said Narissa Henrich, PhD, or Dr. Narissa Henrich. You know, that tells us, okay, she has an advanced degree here. Source of the text. Now, you've got options there. You could do this kind of reading with your textbook. Popular press means something that's published just that gets sold in a store. The kind of book you could pick up at Walmart or Barnes & Noble or Target is a popular press book. You know, a popular magazine doesn't mean that a lot of people like it. It just means it's the same thing. Okay, so when we look at the source of the text, in this case, what I can tell you, so we looked at affiliation, and we said Ms. Hannock is from the University of Cambridge. We don't know if she has an advanced degree or not. Where did this text come from? Now, you didn't go out and get this text yourself, did you?
No.
I handed it to you. So you're going to in that case, you're going to have to ask the person who handed you the text, hey, where'd you get this? This came from a website. Circle that, check it, whatever. Above it, you want to write whose website it was. It was the Society for Experimental Biology. I will write that. So, coming from a university and working for the Society for Experimental Biology, we kind of assume this woman knows what she's talking about. Now, could that not be the case? It could. But all indications are that this is a valid, credible source. That top section is really about analyzing your sources. It's really about thinking about if this is a reasonable source of information. Because I'm going to tell you, you guys have it a lot harder than I did when I was in school. You have it a lot harder than most of your parents did. Because you can go to a little box with a bunch of silicone and copper in it and type in anything and get a result. And there is so much information out there, and a high percentage of it is garbage. And it gets echoed back. So this person quotes the garbage, and then this person quotes that person who's quoting the garbage. And so pretty soon you can find 5 sources that all say the same thing, except they all tie back originally to somebody who didn't know what the heck they were talking about. I had a student a number of years ago who turned in a project where they had used, oh my gosh, what was it? It was a wiki. It was a website that some individual had created. And the information on it was such utter just garbage. It was totally wrong. It didn't even make sense. But he could find 4 other sources that said the same thing. And you could trace them all back to one source that was just spewing nonsense. You know. So this top part is to get you to think a little bit about, is this a good source of information? So now what we're going to do is we're going to look at the first couple paragraphs here. I'm going to read it aloud to you. How many of you like to be read aloud to? Okay. You know what? I have fond memories of being read to as a kid, and it actually never gets old. Do you? Salt of the Earth, How do Plants Cope? That's the title. Remember the feeling of eating too much popcorn? You're usually sitting in the cinema when the lips become dry and tingly because the salt is making them dehydrated. So you reach for the giant drink they foisted on you whilst buying the popcorn. Ah, that's better. But we're lucky that we can do something to remedy our salty overdose. Think of a wheat plant. Roots firmly embedded in the dry earth and in desperate need of water to dilute some of the salt in its system. Unlike us, plants are entirely at the mercy of their environment. So unfortunately, for the immobile plant, when exposed to too much salt, it can be a fatal experience. So, just from that very first paragraph, what do you think that we're talking about here?
About how some people
I would say that, you know, that last sentence, really what you're saying, right from that last sentence, salt can kill a plant. So unfortunately for the immobile plant, when exposed to too much salt, it can be fatal. Fatal means it kills you. Kevin picked up on the last, or the sentence before, or a couple sentences back. Think of a wheat plant, roots firmly embedded in the dry earth and in desperate need of water to dilute some of the salt in its system. What does it mean if you dilute something?
Get rid of them.
No. Okay. This leads us to our next thing. So what I want you to do right now in that first column on your structured reading notes, that very first column, chunk 1. So the chunk we're looking at is really the first paragraph. And in that first chunk, your first column, you're going to write, at a first read through, what's the big idea here? So what do you think this paragraph is talking about? And this, in a little tiny chunk like what we're doing right now, that might be one sentence. It might be salt kills plants, or plants need, it could be really, really brief. All right, so the next chunk, things you already know about the general topic being discussed. What do you already know about salt and plants?
They don't mix.
Okay, Noah says they don't mix. You may have, pardon?
Salt kills plants?
Salt kills plants. You already know that from your personal experience? You have salted a plant and killed it?
Yes.
Okay. Some people salt poison ivy. I've known people who salt their driveways. If you got a gravel driveway and you got a lot of weeds growing up in it, I knew somebody once who used to salt the weeds in the driveway because they won't grow back. Once you salt that soil to a point, salt-saturated soil will not support most plants. So, what do you personally know? What you personally know might be related to that first sentence. Salt makes my lips dry.
Plants need water.
Ah, that's something else you know. Plants require water. So, in that second chunk, especially in such a little tiny piece as we're doing, this first paragraph, it may just be a few words or a few bullet points. They don't have to be complete sentences. No, this is not something where you have to write. I tend to, when I'm making notes, I never write complete sentences. I do bullet points, and that's fine for this. Now, if I ask you to write a paper, you got to write complete sentences. Okay. Words to know, the third column. If there is vocabulary in that paragraph, words that you don't know, list them. And you're going to look them up. Or words that are important to what is being said here. I would pick out dehydrated right away. I think you all know what dehydrated means, right? Okay. But do you think it's important in the context of this paragraph? I would jot it down. Foisted. You might not know what that... Okay, we will pick this up tomorrow. I'll tell you what, you have homework. You have to complete that third column on your own. So pick out the words that you feel are important, copy them down, and then we'll start working on it again tomorrow.